Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to the opening ceremony of the European Education Month of 2026. My name is Silvia Pesini. I am the coordinator on behalf of the European Federation of Education Employers of this network, ELNE, which stands for Educational Leadership Network Europe. It is a real pleasure to have this event for the third consecutive year and to see so many registrations, and this is starting to reflect already on the participants slowly joining. This is the opening ceremony of the entire month. We will have 4 webinars, one each week, each Wednesday at the same time. So we hope to see you also on the sessions to come. And this is the first webinar that we are going to have. So in this webinar, you will be able to hear from the lead partners of ELNE, which will introduce themselves when the time is due, but we have here with us EFI, ETUC, ESHA, OBESU, and EPA, who, again, you will get to know a little bit later. And we are very happy to have as well with us a representative from the European Commission, and specifically the DG for Education and Culture, which supports and also co-finances this network. Before we begin, I just wanted to mention a few technical points. As I mentioned, this webinar is being recorded, so for GDPR purposes, you will see that your cameras and microphones rights are off at the moment. This doesn't mean that we don't want you to participate. We actually encourage you to be very active on the chat, and that you raise your hand if there are any pressing questions after any of the presentations that we will have. I will not go too much into detail now about this webinar because that is the role of our first speaker, who will set the scene for today's discussion and for the conversation that we will continue to have throughout the month. So it is therefore my pleasure to introduce Rodrigo Queiroz Emero, who is the Vice President of the European Federation of Education Employers, who is the organization coordinating ELNE. So Rodrigo will reflect a little bit on the importance of the moment that the network finds itself in this third year of life, and then also to set the broader discussion on collaborative leadership that will continue to take place throughout the month. So without further ado, let us begin. And Rodrigo, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Silvia. Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to our opening ceremony of our event. Of course, setting the tone means that, just reminding us all, we live in very strange times, in a way, tense times where discord and anger seem to be the norm. And so, if ever before, we really need education, collaboration. We need to work together as a way of finding our voices, knowing each other, and helping kids interact with differences, but in a constructive way. And so, as always, we really look at the work done on education across Europe and with all Europeans as very important for our common future. And so, education, leadership, and collaboration, 3 keywords very important for the world we really want to live on. This opening ceremony is an important moment in ELNE's third year, not simply because it begins the week of seminars, the series of seminars, but in this is a strategic moment where we would like to reflect on how collaborative leadership can become a sustained European priority. When we, various stakeholders, created ELNE, the aim was to find a way to address common educational challenges in a collaborative way. We had a feeling that a lot of us on the leadership, as teachers, as parents, as students, we all were looking at our educational systems, we were seeing problems, we want to get better, but we were working in silos, be these silos the school silos, be these silos national silos. And so at the European level, with multi-stakeholder engagement, we find a way to try to together overcome our difficulties. Over the past years, we have set the ground rules for this collaborative work. We had taken the definition about lead collaboration and leadership collaboration, and now we want to move on. And looking forward, we want to use the EU level definition of collaborative leadership we have, grounded with the multi-stakeholder input, and start to work on it with practical implications and really see this rippling down to the schools, to the leaders, to the different levels of leadership. Of course, and this is always a very big challenge we now have to go from talking points, from meeting with friends from different countries, and really having active engagement from the leaders, from the parents, the teachers, the students, the employers. And this is what today we hopefully will get some insight into in this ceremony. How can we make this work in practical terms? Of course, we still need to take the project further, and so the definitions we work with are always improved, and we can redefine them with everybody's input. We should get guidelines tailored to different situations, but the guidelines to support implementation across the regions and across the different education sectors. And at the same time, we are beginning to look at the development of a self-assessment tool. How can we monitor progress? How can we understand if we are going in the good way? And how can we change course whenever needed and needed? And I would like to again address, because it's never enough to address the need for active participation. We need to put likes on the small videos, but we need really to put ourselves in the project. How do I, as a school leader, look at this? How can I contribute to the community? What can I learn from my newfound friends? And so this is the key question that we would be addressing today. How can collaborative leadership become a sustained European priority with lasting, real impact? And so, Silvia, in a nutshell, I think this is what we are aiming for, and we are very excited to be doing this with a lot of people coming in.
Yes, thank you very much, Rodrigo, for setting the stage so clearly and emphasizing the importance of the moment. Also, you gave already a little bit of a sprinkle information of what we are looking forward to co-create together. So now the question to provide all the participants here with a bit more information is, what has ELNE already built in these past 2 years, and how has it grown from a project into the community that is today? So for this, we welcome to the stage now Daniele Sabato, who is the Project and Policy Coordinator at the Organizing Bureau of European School Students Union, who, as I mentioned before, is one of the lead partners of ELNE. So Daniele, the floor is all yours.
Thank you very much, Silvia, and welcome everyone to the opening ceremony of this 2026 European Education Month. As Silvia said, I represent Obesu, one of the lead partners of ELNE. We represent school student unions active in general, secondary, and vocational education and training across Europe, with 37 members across 28 countries. Indeed, as our colleague from FAA, Rodrigo, said, ELNE started as a project to understand practice and foster collaboration within and across educational communities. But it also became so much more. ELNE developed into a broader network of hundreds of members and individual supporters that championed and continue to champion the objectives of the European education area and future European education policies. In this regard, ELNE is addressing many needs: the need for student participation and engagement, inequalities and forms of exclusion in education, the problem of early school leaving, and the need to strengthen the education profession. In line with the European education area objectives and the new educational challenges that we are facing today, we are bridging gaps in European education systems. And this not only concerns the well-being, the ownership, and the sense of belonging of all educational actors. It's also about the promotion and development of civic knowledge, citizenship education, EU values in education. In this way, ELNE reinforces the overall quality, effectiveness, and impact of educational policies at all levels. Now, where are we headed? Well, by bringing students, teachers, school heads, parents, education employers together, ELNE is now set up to shape the standards for democratic, participatory, whole school collaboration in European education. And as it was briefly mentioned before, one of the main steps to achieve this has been the development of a first EU-level definition of collaborative leadership in education. This definition focuses on the active, goal-oriented, and whole school engagement of all educational leaders. And this is rooted in core principles like mutual trust, respect, shared values, and collective responsibility. In this way, ELNE moves away from a top-down management toward a model where leadership is distributed among key stakeholders to enhance school capacity. More importantly, this common EU definition fosters the alignment and effectiveness of all those policies that rely on collaboration among educational actors. The definition supports the research on this problem, on collaborative leadership. And it also contributes to the democratization of education systems all across Europe and beyond. So with this in mind, ELNE is set to deliver a long-lasting, sustainable impact on how collaboration in education is designed, implemented, and monitored across the EU. It is with this vision that we hope to strengthen EU's capacity to drive harmonization and innovation in education and contribute to more resilient leadership and supportive learning environments across European education systems. And having now given you an overview of what we have built, I would now move to framing a bit the policy context with this, and I will give the floor back to Silvia. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Daniela, and thank you for telling us a little bit what the work has been like. I think many of the participants in this webinar are very aware because it has been a very collaborative process between all of us. We've had every year these sessions with the online webinars, we've had the in-person conferences, and we've been, as you mentioned, Daniela, every year putting out a set of policy recommendations. And actually our leader in this effort has been the European Trade Union Committee for Education, ETUC, who is one of the lead partners. So we really wanted to have this conversation today, from presenting you what has been done and where are we headed. What can we do to really support collaborative leadership becoming a European policy priority? So I would like to give the floor now to John McGowan, who is the president of ETUC, to tell us a little bit about this, and then we will have as well the European Commission letting us know what is happening in Europe, where can we head with collaborative leadership at the policy level. So John, the floor is yours. You are muted, John. We cannot hear you yet.
So, can you hear me now?
Yes, perfect.
Okay. I'm in an airport, which is not ideal, but I'll have to make do. First of all, colleagues, thank you very much for organizing yet again what promises to be a very fruitful engagement through the ELNE network. And I want, just in the first instance, to pay tribute to the Secretariat, both of FA and ETUCE, for the huge amount of background work that is necessary and is invariably done, and done very well, to facilitate this process. I won't repeat what has already been said in terms of what I think Danielle has very eloquently set out as the aim of this joint effort, this collaborative effort, to have collaborative, coordinated, effective leadership. And I'm, I suppose, going to focus somewhat on the notion of effectiveness. I entirely agree. ETUCE entirely supports the notion not just of leadership that is collaborative in accordance with the definitions that have been defined and established through the recommendations or implementation of the recommendations that have so far come forth from the process. But I suppose also what we need to ensure is that our efforts, our collaborative efforts, lead to effective outcomes for our students. And I want briefly to focus on what are perhaps the risks to the process, because if we don't risk assess the process, we are likely to make errors. And I would prefer make errors of commission than errors of omission. We can't, I think, allow ourselves the luxury at some point in the future of claiming innocence or ignorance. So we have to be very clear about what it is that presents itself by way of risk. So with that in view, I think the stakes have risen over the past period of time in terms of either developing or where it's already developed, maintaining and enhancing democratic education through collaborative leadership. That leadership, as has been said, needs to be inclusive and it needs to be generous in terms of being at all points characterized by a willingness to hear and to the greatest extent possible to facilitate the concerns of our colleagues. The concerns of the unions and of teachers currently are well enough documented in respect of the waning attractiveness of the profession. And that has several roots. Some of them are very obvious. And I suppose in a technical sense, some of them are relatively easily remedied if investment in education is sufficient. But I'm not going to focus on those. I want to focus on the more intangible, but nonetheless very important issues, particularly the professional issue. There is a fundamental problem in that in many of our jurisdictions, there is a nominal respect for the teaching profession. It's lip service. But when it comes actually to the definition, the incorporation of curriculum, there is a reluctance, sometimes a refusal, to engage teachers properly through social dialogue and structural mechanisms. And I want to instance, I suppose, not by way of insult or rebuke, but by way of challenge to our guests from the Commission today, the very particular concerns we have about an absence of clarity in relation to the Commission's approach. In the headline programs or the headline initiatives that the Commission is currently engaged in, the Union of Skills and the associated teachers and trainers agenda, there is a very, very marked absence of precisely the sort of collaboration that we, through the ELNE network, are attempting to develop. It's structurally unsound to proceed as the Commission has set out in the Union of Skills, if that involves, as it does up to now, an absence of real engagement as opposed to tokenistic engagement, both with the unions and the employers. And I extend beyond that, of course, to student and parent representatives as well. And I want to be concrete about this. We would have expected by now to have known the manner in which the high level body that is to preside essentially over the Union of Skills or advise in relation to it, is to be constituted. That's maybe a good thing, because the original suggestion in terms of its constitution would almost entirely have excluded education employers and education teacher representatives. And that, quite frankly, is not good enough. It was the initial suggestion was replete with the notion that those who should guide education would come from the field of commerce. In other words, their interest would be directed by their commercial interests rather than by the fundamental educational interests, the democratic interests that motivate us. If that is the path along which the Commission proceeds, then ELNE can work to a degree and to an effective degree in terms of how matters are managed locally, but it will be stymied in the greater pursuit of attempting to have a pan-European approach that embeds collaborative leadership as effective leadership. The teacher's agenda, therefore, is extremely important, and that is this year's, if you like, headline component, or was the headline component in relation to the broader Union of Skills. And it is a matter of concern to us that we had to press hard. We did succeed, but we had to press hard for the sort of structural, organic involvement in that process that should have been automatically offered. Now, we have had a sequence of, I think, productive engagements with the DGEAC, but we still have a concern that the engagement that was had is not penetrating to the higher political levels within the directorates, either of EAC or of employment. In other words, to the levels at which decisions will eventually and critically be made. Unless the idea of collaborative leadership also includes the idea that that collaboration extends to the structured involvement of ETUCE as the representative group for trade unions and teachers, and FA as the representative group for employers. Unless that becomes embedded, then it would appear that we have tokenistic, as I say, as opposed to real support from the Commission. I also want to address a couple of other present issues and indeed concerning issues. And the first one has to do, not indirectly, but quite directly with curriculum, that which we are engaged in conveying. Curriculum should be rich. Curriculum should also respect both national autonomy and the autonomy of the teacher. But if the digital omnibus is pursued with the vigor that it appears to have started out with, and if deregulation of the digital space, and particularly the AI space, is allowed to continue, what we will have is de facto colonization by external interests that are not educationally motivated of our curriculum. And that, quite frankly, would be enormously damaging to the education process generally, to the integrity of curriculum, to the sovereignty of governments, and also to the autonomy of schools and professional autonomy of teachers. So I don't wish to be a wet blanket. I don't wish to throw, if you like, cold water on things. But I think we need, frankly, to acknowledge the risks that we currently face. And I have not, and I will not, because it's almost too obvious for statement, add much about the risk that is posed by the anti-democratic forces, East and West, that currently are pressing upon European states, European statehood, and European capacity to educate or to determine how to educate the children of Europe in a manner that is inclusive, holistic, collaborative. I leave it at that, Sylvia.
Thank you, John, and thank you for stressing the importance of having this dialogue amongst ourselves, but also with the European Commission. So once again, we are very thankful that Ulrike could be here today from the DG of Education and Culture, but specifically from the Unit of Schools and Multilingualism, who is supporting ELNE and closely cooperating with ELNE. So we would like to hear now a little bit from Ulrike on what is going on at European policy level with collaborative leadership, but also in regards to this network, and perhaps addressing some of the direct points or questions from John. So Ulrike, the floor is all yours. Thank you again for joining us today.
Yes, thank you very much. So I'm Deputy Head of Unit of the Schools and Multilingualism Unit in DG EAC. We are working on a wide range of issues on teachers and school leaders. We are working also on basic skills, on well-being, on inclusion, on early childhood education and care. Basically everything I said is spanning from ECEC up to upper secondary. So a lot of topics. And actually, when I got the invite to this webinar, I thought actually we are already promoting collaborative leadership. Sometimes it's under different names, and maybe that's really one of the benefit of your network, that you're coming with this real definition that is a European definition. We are sometimes calling it whole school approach, distributed leadership, school climate as well. But a lot of work still needs to be done and remains to be done to make this a reality across schools, but not only across schools, as John mentioned, also across across systems, education systems at national and at European level, as you outlined. So I think that's very important, the work that you're doing, because you're really a key partner. You're providing good practice. You're providing evidence. You're providing this forum also for sharing concerns and sharing good practices, I hope, as well in the course of this month. So yeah, I mean, when I was looking at the evidence, we have now the latest TALIS data, where we will soon publish a EU-wide report, and actually it is not so bad. A lot of the teachers are spending more time working together than it used to be the case 6 years ago. We also see collaborative practices expanding. We actually, out of 8 out of 10 teachers report that their schools provide them with opportunities to participate in leadership, for example, in school decision making, etc. But okay, there's also lots still to be done. When you look a bit closer at the data, often this takes the informal forms of collaboration, and the intensive forms of professional collaboration and involvement in leadership, more structured, they are much less common. So this is something that we definitely are looking into it. You mentioned already the upcoming EU Teachers and Trainers agenda that has been announced under the Union of Skills, and collaborative leadership is something that is closely connected to autonomy and agency of teachers. So this message has well arrived at our level. Then also thanks to you and thanks to the engagement we had, as you mentioned, John, we had a very intensive engagement already with you and with all the stakeholders, also including teachers themselves and school leaders themselves on what should be in the future Teachers and Trainers agenda. But coming to the questions you asked me, they're very concrete questions actually. How do we already in our policy framework support collaborative leadership? And there I was first and foremost thinking about the European education area that we have been building up for the last 5 years. So on the one hand, there was very intensive collaboration in the working groups. So in our unit, for example, we have 3 working groups: early childhood education and care, schools, pathways to success, and also schools, the sustainability education. And they are themselves, I think, very good examples of this multidimensional process that you use in your definition as well, where ministries, agencies, civil society, and social partners are actually coming together to engage in shared reflection and issue concrete guidance as well. But more than just being the process, it's also the content. Several of the working groups really addressed collaborative leadership explicitly. You will hear more about this on the 18th of March, when my colleagues engage with you in another webinar presenting, for example, the work that was done under the early childhood education and care group that recognized really the pivotal role of collaborative leadership in support to inclusion. That also actually, I see it more and more mentioned in high-level policy debates. So, for example, we just had the Directorate General for Schools meeting in Nicosia under the Cypriot presidency, and they explicitly also mentioned collaborative leadership and support to leaders as a really important policy area. And the same was at the informal ministerial meeting of education ministers end of January, where I attended. And then when you look at the Union of Skills that was adopted exactly, I mean, one day, tomorrow actually, one year ago, it also positions skills and learning as a multidimensional societal project. So really requiring coordination of not only education and within education institutions, but also with employment, with social and industrial policies. So now I've heard you, John, your plea to embed really the real collaborative leadership at the highest level as well. But just to say, I think it's really important that what you are doing in your network to really have this joint plea and provide also the highest political levels with evidence and practices. That this is the way to go. And I will come in a minute to why it is important for resilience and quality and everything that we promote also at European level. But before I do that, I just also wanted to mention that there are lots of support under Erasmus Plus, precisely for as a laboratory where this leadership becomes visible and practical. So, for example, this network is co-financed by Erasmus Plus, but also under the Erasmus Plus teacher academies, we certainly see there the need and the possibility also to focus more on leadership competences and professional learning. We provide lots of opportunities, and we have good examples of school leadership groups actually using Erasmus Plus job shadowing or cooperation projects to learn from other systems. And we, in particular, also really foster cooperation partnerships where we, for example, are really supporting the wider collaboration with multi-stakeholder in a multi-stakeholder approach of schools. I'm just mentioning the call that is currently open and for the STEM centers, the STEM education centers, for example. That is one of the calls we have where we encourage schools to really collaborate, widen the collaboration that they have with leaders around the schools to promote a better STEM education. That's just one example. And then we come to the council recommendations. I mentioned in the very beginning that sometimes collaborative leadership takes different names. And when you look at pathways to school success, so some of the core guidance documents that were adopted by the council in the area of education, so pathways to school success, learning for environmental sustainability, or our well-being guidance, you really find that the whole school or whole institution approach, the partnerships and the multi-stakeholder governance are really embedded in these documents and have already become core guidance. And why is that actually the case? You ask me, so why, how does it contribute to resilience and quality? And I think there we have lots of good evidence and examples that in a world of permanent transition, you have to build resilience on and through shared leadership. So we see this from COVID-19. We also have looked at the lessons learned from Ukraine and why were they actually able to reopen their schools after the aggression by Russia within 2 weeks only. It's because they actually built on systems that empower teams, learners and communities in a decentralized way, and where actually leaders were empowered also to take decisions and were supported. And this was something we also are promoting now, and we also put into our latest publication that we just published. It's called A Model for Leadership in Times of Crisis. It's an NSET report that just came out. It highlights in itself the importance of collaborative leadership to create resilience. And it's also a quality factor. And I think this is probably widely known in this community, but just to quote some of the recent evidence, I come back again to the Thales results, where we see that collaborative leadership helps improving teachers' job satisfaction, professional growth, and retention. We also see that schools with a strong professional collaboration actually tend to show better learning outcomes and more inclusive practices. In summary, I think that is where we can say resilient quality systems are those where many people can lead and not where leadership depends on a few. So when you create redundancy, so if one person or institution is under pressures, others are actually empowered and have the capacity and the knowledge to step in, that is something that is extremely important for the resilience of the systems and of the institutions. And then it's also a quality factor. So this whole institution approaches are more effective to meet the needs that actually schools have to meet today. For example, the well-being of pupils and of teachers, the sustainability, and the digital transformation. And as a last question, the third one, you have asked me if collaborative leadership can actually become a EU policy priority in education. And I would say it is already a priority, so maybe not explicitly, not as a standalone label, but across our education policies, it is actually really visible in teachers, trainers, and school leaders being a priority under the European education area and under the Union of Skills narrative as well. So it's really, it is there. And we are all looking forward to the teachers and trainers agenda, making this even more explicit. And it's also, let's say, visible in the work we are doing on democratic resilience, citizenship, and learning for environmental sustainability. I think there are still, as I said in the beginning, there's still a lot of untapped potential, and for sure there's more that we can do. I mean, what I, at my level, could imagine, but it's all subject also to political discussions, member state support, and support from the highest political level, of course. It's future policy guidance, so documents, for example, from the Council that explicitly highlight the collaborative and the system leadership as enablers of quality and inclusion, a stronger emphasis in Erasmus Plus also, and in our outreach platforms, e-twinning on leadership, more structured peer learning. I mentioned the examples of early childhood education and care. I think this working group really led also by example, but there's certainly scope also to have that conversation and peer learning in all the sectors in education, in vet, in adult learning, higher education. And of course, then strengthening also the teachers and school leader voices in policy making. And there we also hear very strongly what comes out from the global level, the Santiago Consensus, for example, that called for precisely that. So there we have to look how to translate that in our region from the global level seen, the European region. So there I'm really calling on your network to do your advocacy role and your, in this month, in the webinars, also in the upcoming annual conference, to document and disseminate your good practices and help us also to really see where European support can be most useful for all the leaders at the different levels. And that is also, I mean, it's a European level, but I think it's also very important to see what Europe can do for really like institutional leaders at the local level, at the municipality level. So there we are happy and we are listening to this discussion and the rest of the month. So thanks a lot and thanks for the invitation.
Thank you, Ulrike, and thank you also for bringing to our attention all of these different, let's say, concepts where we are actually working together, but perhaps missing each other, because especially from the calls that we have launched in the previous years, where we have been collecting good practices and research, we have indeed seen a lot of different examples where perhaps those authors weren't calling themselves, collaborative leaders, or this is collaborative leadership. But they have been definitely very inspiring and very representative of what we were, let's say, promoting and asking for. And we are as well targeting the different sectors and the different regions to have this peer learning and this transferability that you were mentioning before. And as for the call to action that you launched there on member states supporting more policy guidance, more emphasis on collaborative leadership and on strengthening the voice of the different stakeholders, I think that this is the perfect platform. We have all of our audience here representing all of these different stakeholders with these different capacities and roles. So I think it's the moment now actually to engage them and to ask them what else can we do to support them, support us, and support EU policymaking on collaborative leadership. And for this, I give the floor to the European Parents Association with Arya Crouchenberg, who is the project coordinator and representing, of course, another lead partner of the network. And Arya, I leave it up to you to organize the session. So the floor is all yours.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Sylvia, and I hope you can hear me well. I'm at the Civil Society Week here at the EESC, and I have retreated to a kind of telephone booth in order to be able to follow this session and participate in the opening ceremony. Thank you very much to all of the speakers before me and the important points that were already raised. I would like to come back to several of them. One right now connected actually to the Civil Society Week. I've just come out of a session that was on media and digital resilience as safeguards for democracy. And at the end of the session, there was a Slido poll where the participants were asked what they saw as the main solution to media resilience, how digital resilience could be created on the European level, on the local level, and so on. And let me tell you that each and every time education came up as the most prominent answer. Yeah. So I really think that we are well placed here in our network to help solve this issue. I'm a bit concerned, as John already pointed out, that maybe on the European level, it's not always as serious meant as it sounds. We've just learned that there's a new high-level committee being established that will deal with skills. But civil society will not be represented there. Yeah. So if you expect us to do all this work, then I think we should also be at the table and not only on the menu. Just a little side remark. When we talk about educational leadership in schools and what can we do more, I think I would like to give you an example that dates way before this network was established. I would like to take you back to the year 2018. You may even close your eyes and imagine the European Parents Association having a meeting at a school in Spain, to be precise, in the Basque country, in close to Bilbao, and it's an Ikastola. For those of you who are not familiar with this concept, these are the schools that teach exclusively in Basque. They do also teach Spanish and English as foreign languages, but all the other teaching happens in Basque. And when we arrived to the school, a young man came up to us and said, well, you see, I'm the headmaster, but he was clad in jeans and a pullover, and he seemed more like being a student from the university. And he then explained to us that, yeah, you know, the government or the regional authorities, they need somebody to sign the paper. So officially he's the headmaster, but then actually he works with a whole team of people in collaborative leadership. Teachers, headmaster, parents, and students. And then he presented to us what they have been doing for at least the past 10 years and how the system worked. It was absolutely amazing. The most amazing thing was that he said, you know, our most difficult thing was to involve the parents, not because they were not willing to participate, but as we are a Basque-speaking school, all our discussions were in Basque, and many of our parents did not speak any Euskera, because they had put their children into the school because they wanted them to continue holding up the tradition that had been there and that had been the language that had been spoken by their forefathers. But because it had been forbidden in the Franco regime, they themselves had never had the opportunity to learn it. So what did the school do? Because they really wanted the parents to participate in this collaborative endeavor, they offered Euskera classes also for parents. Yeah, so I think this is a wonderful example of how you can overcome obstacles, how you can make people participate and engage, and how you can guarantee that everybody has a place at the table and that their voices are heard. We will have two more examples that I'm happy to introduce, but please keep this one in mind because I think it's very important to have these examples on the local level. But of course, it's not only about having good grassroots examples. It is important to scale up and to get them out there so that more schools and more institutions can adopt this collaborative leadership according to the definition that we have come up with together. And I would invite now, I think it was Heikki from Finland, who was going to present us also with an example from the Finnish education employers. Please.
Thank you, Arja. Good afternoon, everyone. Greetings from Helsinki, Finland. And I'm representing here the Finnish education employers, Sivista. And I'm also a board member of FE. We have been involved with the ELNI network from the start. And let me say that in this day and age, leadership in education seems to be becoming more and more crucial all the time. As previous speakers noted, there are growing expectations towards education all the time. Now my screen went blank, but you can still probably hear me. Okay, I can
hear
see
you, Heikki, yes.
Okay.
We don't see you though.
Let's hope it comes back. Sorry about that. Okay, so as previous speakers said, expectations towards education are growing all the time, and education is seen as the solution, which it truly can be for many problems in our society. But so pressures and expectations towards education are growing all the time. We can see that no matter what debate there is going on in society, at least here in Finland, it's always said, oh, we must resolve this in schools by teaching the kids more of this and that. So pressure is growing all the time, but the resources are not always growing in parallel to the demands. So it can be easily said that more and more is required of us educators with less resources in use. Well, so that means that educational leadership plays a very critical role, and at the same time, its scope is getting wider and wider. Educational leadership is about solving more and more problems and very new types of problems in the changing technological landscape. So, but also we believe that educational leadership can be the key to solving many of these problems. At Sivista, we have been working with ELNE, and I would like to point out a very particular point of view to the work that we have been doing. We have found a new way to connect with our members, the education providers. Through this work, we have been reaching out to them to come up with the best practices and examples of the work that they do. And I'm glad to say that a couple of them will be presented, I hope, this year in the ELNE Journal and the webinars again. And if I may say one, just point out one that I'm particularly keen to learn more about is high school students mentoring university leadership. So that is a kind of turning the tables kind of approach to getting a new point of view for educational leadership. So for us at Civista, it's a great opportunity to reach out to our members and to give them a stage and a spotlight where they can highlight the work that they have been doing. It's not only an added bonus, it has become a very important part of participating in this network. Of course, it's always also a joy to be with you, our network members, in different events and different fora, and learn from one another. But I will keep it brief unless you have some questions. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Heike. And then I would go on to Romain Normand from the University of Strasbourg. And he has a suggestion to use ELNE funding for seminars on leadership for French-speaking community. Please go ahead.
Yes, thank you very much for your invitation. Thanks to ELNE and to EFI. I'm professor at the University of Strasbourg, and I'm studying school leadership, and I'm training French principals. So I'm pleased to speak about an upcoming event at the University of Strasbourg in France, where we will explore engaging and insightful topics on educational leadership from the 16th to the 18th of March. Why this event? There is a wealth of research and knowledge produced and accumulated in Europe and around the world. Yet this work remains largely undone in the French-speaking community, research and practice. And given that ELNE network has generated comprehensive summaries of the research and emphasized key innovations in educational leadership, particularly, I contribute to this work with my colleagues in the ELNE Research Committee. And now it is crucial moments to disseminate and transfer this valuable knowledge to professional and policymakers in the French-speaking community to drive, or we hope that, to drive impactful change. How is this process? At the level of the French-speaking community, we have decided to organize a meeting between high-level experts and reflexive practitioners to facilitate the dissemination and transfer of leadership. It is not a scientific event, but a peer learning activity, and people from different countries with different scientific and professional backgrounds and cultures will meet during these days. This is done in partnership with the Advanced Institute of Studies in Education and Training of the French Ministry of Education, as well as other partners and providers. The mission of this National Institute is to train all school principals in France and inspectors. And we already organized the first French conference on school leadership with them 2 years ago. The aim now is to ensure that the Strasbourg meeting is followed by other action led by the French-speaking community in the months and years to come. And what is expected to disseminate recommendation within the French-speaking community through various institutions and professional networks with a vision to elaborate and to adopt educational leadership practices. The aim too is to encourage French-speaking policymakers to reflect on the importance of collaborative leadership in supporting school transformation and preparing the 21st century education. Propose new training contents and skill frameworks for school principals, and of course to contribute to the ELNE work in the French-speaking professional and scientific community. So I would like to thank EFI and ELNE for their support for this event, and in particular Daniel Winiewski and Sylvia and Mika Risku. We can see him, but greetings. And I hope that this is the beginning of an adventure, and that other members of the French-speaking community will be able to continue and pursue this effort. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Indeed, I think this is a major effort. Knowing the French education system a little bit more in detail, I know that here the changes are very difficult to achieve. It's a very traditional system, and leadership so far was very, very, very strictly defined. So to transform that into a collaborative leadership is much more of an endeavor than in many other countries. So congratulations on your efforts, and we're looking forward to see what impact that will have on the long run. If I can just come back.
Thank you. These are the first stones on a very long road.
Yeah, but every journey starts with the first steps. If you don't take the first steps, you will never get anywhere. So I'm really looking forward to see what this will lead to, and congratulations for taking these for taking the lead on this first steps in the journey. For parents, and when I talk about the European Parents Association and our more than 30 members in 20 different countries, the situation of leadership or the perception of leadership is very different from one country to the next. Of course, we have education systems where parents are considered as part of the system, as part of the leadership. In some countries, like in Austria, this is even in the law, but there are many other countries where this is still not the case, and where people also do not perceive themselves as part of the decision-making bodies. So we're still working on this, and of course the ELNA research helps a lot to provide people with good examples, to provide people with possibilities of how this can be done. But then, of course, it takes efforts from all sides in order to make this possible. And cooperation, I think, in these days, I think we have understood even more than before that this is absolutely crucial. It was mentioned, I think, by Heike just before, that there's a lot more demand now on educational systems than there was before. Every time something new comes up, the schools or the education system should solve this problem. This, of course, will not be possible. I think that the societies also need to understand that there are certain issues that they need to figure out themselves, and they cannot push everything back into the schools. But our educational systems need to adapt to these new challenges. And we really need to ask ourselves the question whether the systems that we have in place are still valid, whether the way we transmit still a lot of knowledge instead of fostering competencies is still the right way to go. And whether, like we have the discussion now, for example, in Austria, well, we take 2 hours away from Latin and language teaching, and we put democracy education and AI in the place. I think these kind of what I call cosmetic changes have to stop. We really have to rethink how the systems are constructed, how they are built, and integrate certain aspects from the very start. They are not an add-on. They cannot be just added in a few hours at a certain level, according to whoever can make time where, but they really have to be integrated in the whole of the teaching. And that needs new teachings, that needs a new teacher trainings. But I'm convinced that if we want to stay competitive, and that's, I think, one of the goals of the European Commission as well, if we want to stay competitive, then we absolutely need to integrate these things into our curricula, not adding them on as another hour here and another lesson there, but they have to be part of the whole system. Thank you very much. I think we are passing on now to a Paul, if I'm well informed. Sylvia? Yes, please.
Yes, indeed.
So you will receive this question. In your current role, how could you most realistically support ELNE's work and its sustainability? You should be seeing,
Yes, so
yes.
you can either scan the QR on the screen, or I think you should have received as well as a link on the chat for those that perhaps are on the phone. So you should be able to answer this question now. So we're interested to hear from all of you. Many of you have been very active already on the network for the past couple of years. Some of you might have just gotten to know us. How can we leverage what you can do in your capacity, in your role to support ELNE and of course collaborative leadership in your context? So you have some options there. Feel free as well to comment on the chat if there's any other suggestions that you have or things that you have already been doing. Hopefully these testimonies have inspired you a little bit already as well. So we see the sharing of good examples and research is definitely something that not only you can contribute, but that interests you a lot. We see always a lot of movement around our journals and our webinars, where we provide this platform to talk a little bit more in depth about each of them. So as we mentioned before, next Wednesday, actually, we are having the webinar where we bring the journal to life. There's, I think this time around 30 or even more examples of collaborative leadership through practices and through research on the journal that will come out next week as well, together with the webinar. And in the webinar, we will be able to talk to some of those authors. So perhaps some of you present here already today. I'm not sure who is in the room and who isn't. As well, promoting ELNE's work within my organization, your dissemination of all of our activities and outputs is very important, definitely. And those who do not know yet how to contribute, again, please feel free to drop in the chat what are your concerns or what would you expect as another option or pathway for collaborating with ELNE, and we can definitely look into those. So we keep going for a little bit before I close this questionnaire to go on to the next question. Okay, perhaps we can move now on to the next question. So I'm going to close this one, so we will not be able to receive more practices. But again, if you want to add something, please do it in the chat. And we move on to our next question. Are you able to see it on the screen? What would you need from ELNE to support you in these efforts? Yes, perfect. So you should be able to respond again on the same link or same QR code. So as we mentioned before, most of these that you see here on the options are something that we are currently working on. For all of them, your active participation and input is extremely important to refine the definition that we have already co-designed, to understand better the different elements or perspectives from the stakeholders, but also the commonalities and differences across educational sectors, across geographical areas. So we're working on this actively as well through the webinars that will come after in this month, but as well through the calls for proposals where we'll receive your examples, in the ELNE in-person conference where we always work very actively with very interactive activities, collecting your examples and your views, your feedback. And once again, there's the option of other. So what else would you perhaps expect or hope that ELNE can provide you with to continue supporting collaborative leadership in your context. So once again, we see practices and research examples that are transferable and sustainable. It's a key tool. Country-specific recommendations for supporting the engagement with national authorities. As well as Rodrigo and Daniele mentioned at the beginning, this is something that we are starting to work on now with all of these different perspectives and the data that we've collected from different stakeholder perspectives and sectors. Okay, so I think we will leave it here, Aria. I'm not sure if you have perhaps some concluding remarks after seeing these answers, or if we will move on directly to Petra for our concluding words.
Yes, I think they're not really surprising, these answers. I think everybody understands what is at stake and how they would like to ELNE to support them, but also some great ideas to how they could support ELNE. I think we will collect that and we will try to make that happen in the future. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Aria. And I will directly give the floor now to Petra van Haren, the Director of the European School Heads Association, and our fifth lead partner in ELNE, to give us the perspective of the school heads and, of course, to give us the closing remarks for this webinar. So, Petra, the floor is yours.
Yes, thank you, Sylvia, and pleased to meet you all. It's great that you're all here. Getting back to the ESHA network and to school leadership. ESHA is an organization that has the members in 30 countries, and by nature, we are a network organization. In a way, ELNE is a network organization, but different. What binds us is leadership. When we are in a network like ELNE, the leadership's network, it requires that we let go of our own identity as an organization in a way, because we want to serve the greater purpose. Now, there is a kind of analogy that in the ecosystem of the school, we have the actors of the employer, the school leaders, the teachers, there are the parents, there are the students, the 5 big entities. And in this network, these are the 5 lead partners as well. So in a way, we have a micro level and a macro level that have the same kind of actors that are leading on developments, but they're not the only actors. And that's why I like to speak of us, because all of you who are part of this network, you are the network, we are the network. It's not that somebody owns a network. The characteristic of a network is that you're both bringing, taking, participating, engaging. So it's not like there is a center hub that is actually steering a network. No, we are all responsible. And it's a kind of exciting because you have your own perspectives on your role as a leader, your role as an organization. You have your own backgrounds, your different contexts. And I think what's the most important thing to do is not to say that you're a network, but to show that you're a network. And that's so great about today. What we are doing here is showing that we are a network. And it's not so easy because we still bring our backgrounds and we have our experiences. And how do you do this together that all of you who are present today can be a part of this communication? And I think it's also my question today to have a call of action. Well, what I would like to call upon is that all of us, we, you, us, that we have some challenges to address to improve communication and engagement. We have a wonderful research committee. They engage a lot with us, but how do we engage together with the research and what they are doing? How we connect all these different levels from our own responsibilities and networks. And I know sharing your network is a kind of scary thing to do because in a way, a network is also your unique selling point. You connect your world, your unions or your organizations or your members. And when you are starting to share, in the beginning, the first steps are not so easy because it means that you have to give a lot of trust. And in a time where trust is one of the most difficult things to give, we are under pressure, there is aggression, there are political and ethical things happening that we may not agree upon. And at the same time, in this network, we call upon open up, share, and be confident. But still, I think what we have as a challenge is one of the most beautiful calls of action that we have. Education is one of the strongest forces. Personally, I believe a lot in the Lemniscat, where you bind the bottom-up movement with what is happening, for example, in policies or in the world. And it's not about the frequency, it's about the quality of what we do. And this network on all of its levels is actually filling in this Lemniscat of things that are happening in our organizations, in our schools, things that are happening on policy level. And we are kind of building this bridge, which is one of the most difficult bridges to have because policies are very far from the actual work practice, and work practice usually is very far from politics. And at the same time, we are both the most powerful entities that can change things. So collaborating in a network as ELNE is, I think it's a gift to all of us. It's a gift to ourselves because we are the ones creating and being this network. And I think the relevancy is therefore also built by us ourselves. What Romuald presented, I think, is a very important thing. Brussels seems to be the hub because our European politicians are in Brussels. But all of our members are in all the other countries, and we cannot expect everybody to come to Brussels, to talk to Brussels, to be there, to have our voices heard. It's also our job to bring the network to all the member states, to all the engaged organizations, and that's a huge challenge. And once again, I think this kind of network can be the platform where we do this and where we actually connect people, organization, collect voices, advocate for this, and give trust to each other. So where possible, please support the network. You are here. You are not the persons that we are looking for in a way that you are already engaged. But it's also upon you to have others around you engaged in the same network, because I know one thing from my organization and from my life, that the more people unite, the stronger your voice is. And if you are able to have this bottom-up movement be so strong, there is no politician in the world that can ignore you, because our voices matter. And I think, Ulrike, EAC, you all know that working together and binding this together, that's the force that we have. I thank you so much for being here today. I thank Sylvia for the wonderful moderation that she had and all the inputs. And I really hope that we can thrive this network also beyond today and tomorrow, and that we will not depend on money or budgets or whatsoever, but that we really depend on our inspiration to be this network. I have faith. I'm sure you have faith. So thank you all for being here.
Thank you, Petra, for this inspiring conclusion and for all the examples from you and the other partners, the testimonies we had before about collaboration at all different levels. We heard from grassroots, we heard from organizations, we heard at the policy level. And as we've been saying to you, there's more to come on this month. There's more opportunities for conversation, from inspiring showcases and seeing collaborative leadership in action to hearing more from the working groups of the European education area and evidence that they have collected in the past 5 years of their mandate. And lastly, from you. So on the very last week of March, we will have our focus groups with all these different stakeholders to continue refining our data that we have been collecting on the past years, and our definition to work to provide you with these tools that you requested before in the Slido poll. So these guidelines, this self-assessment tool, and whatever else we can do to support together the strengthening of collaborative leadership in Europe. So you should find the link to register to the rest of the webinars, if you haven't yet, on the chat. It's of course available on the ELNE website. And more things to look forward to come is, as I mentioned before, the journal with the collection of inspiring showcases, which will be available on our website next Monday, and complemented with the webinar with other inspiring showcases, the ELNE annual conference, which will take place in Brussels. We completely agree that it needs to go beyond Brussels, but for the moment, this in-person event will take place here on 7th of May. And you can also already look forward to the next set of calls for good practices and research summaries that will be launched in April 2026. So as Petra mentioned, you are already here, you are already involved, you are already active, but we really ask you for that further next step, like Heikki shared before, of involving your network, helping us identify in your context those great examples of collaborative leadership and help us share them with a wider audience. So thank you again, everybody, for coming. We hope to see you throughout the month and have a wonderful rest of your day.